Welcome to episode 30 of Pinnacle FC. Gareth Wheeler, Jake Osgathorpe with you again to spin you around the top games in domestic football across Europe. I've lost my voice a little bit. I'm a little bit under the weather, but the good news is my Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl champions hat came in the post, and I'm sporting it on today's podcast with my beautiful Pinnacle hoodie. I've actually had a couple listeners reach out to me and ask us where we get the Pinnacle gear. Jake, do you have the connection? Because I certainly don't.
No, I don't. But I'm sure the bosses who are in charge of this podcast will be able to sort some people out if they ask. But other than that, I do not know. But yeah, it's nice. You've got a nice full-on navy one there. I've got one that's got a white hoodie and some white trimming on the sleeves, which is slightly different and nice. I do like blue and white, being a Sheffield Wednesday
Beautiful.
fan. So.
Beautiful. Well, they got me after the Super Bowl because they flashed the QR code up on the screen and obviously had a couple drinks and it flashed up. I'm like, obviously I'm going to buy Super Bowl gear. That's what should happen in Premier League games. I'm sure it's not too far away where they just flash up the QR code when your team comes away with a good performance, because if it goes the other way, you don't want to be on the receiving end of whatever falls or comes away from that. Let's get into the games this week. Like, it's an exceptionally busy week because across European football, there's domestic cup competition, there's midweek Premier League action. And then next week, you need to be mindful of the fact that the Champions League and the Europa League and the Conference League all ramp up as well. So plenty of permutations and things to keep in mind ahead of this week's podcast, Jake.
Yeah, big time. And like you said, it's a smattering of major cup competitions across Europe, but there's a midweek round of Premier League, which is taking centre stage for me because I think there's quite a few betting opportunities, some really good matches, especially on the Wednesday. And yeah, you've got teams like Liverpool obviously running away with the title. They've got a tough home game, but they then get a weekend off because they're out the FA Cup, so they got a free week basically to prepare for the big game in the Champions League at PSG. So. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how certain teams approach the midweek matches, particularly looking at the likes of Aston Villa, who have a busy schedule. They play at the weekend and then they have a Champions League game next week. And obviously, I think Arsenal as well are interesting given how depleted they are and got a big Champions League tie coming up as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting, but there's enough to go at and plenty of value to be had.
Let's get straight to it. Oh, just one more thing really quickly. Last Friday was a gift from the betting gods. Cashing 2+ money plays in terms of my best bets on Friday alone. That's the way to enter the weekend. We told you, pick your pleasure in terms of a Brentford positive play against Leicester City. I hope you followed our advice. I mean, it was one-way traffic from the off. That was very profitable, plus 178 in terms of Brentford in over 2.5. And Udinese got past Lecce 1-0, the far better side. But what's with penalties amongst Italian sides right now? Luca, I mentioned on the podcast, it was a chance for him to get double digits in terms of goal scoring the first time in Serie A. He took the ball and he was promptly substituted off after getting into a row with his teammates over who was going to take the penalty. So I didn't care because I cashed a plus 168 backing the away side. But man, it's a little bit of a circus right now, isn't it?
Yeah, just a bit. That was absolutely mental. Like they were literally scrapping between them. It was worse than the Chelsea one last season, actually. The Chelsea one was it was dealt with a little bit quickly and, a little bit more efficiently. But this one was, wow, yeah, just hooked off as well off the back of it. That is serious. But yeah, congrats. Like you said, the Brentford one was an absolute gift. Plus money against Leicester. And to be fair to Leicester, they have reacted. They have made a sacking. They've sacked the backroom staff at Leicester. But kept Ruud van Nistelrooy. He's still there, which is great news for everyone involved.
I saw someone throw out the conspiracy theory that Ruud van Nistelrooy is just doing Manchester United a favor, making sure they don't get dragged into the relegation race by foiling things with Leicester City. But Agent it's a Ruud. Theme, and we'll see if Agent Ruud. We'll see if the theme continues, because I mentioned this to other people in the betting space as well. There are 4 or 5 teams across Europe almost every match week. If it's a reasonable matchup, then you got to play against them, and it's a square play. But I mean, it has been exceptionally profitable here over the last 4 or 6 weeks. So let's get into it. Let's start off with the midweek Premier League games. Is there a game on Wednesday that you have your eye on? You mentioned Arsenal. Maybe we start there, because Arsenal's a very interesting case. They lose to West Ham. Last week, you were a little bit bullish on the podcast, saying you still thought that they may have an outside shot at catching Liverpool. Based on losing to West Ham, Liverpool beating City, I mean, that looks far-fetched at this point. And it looks like Arsenal's going to be hard-pressed just based upon their limited attacking options. Now they go to a Forest side that put 3 past Newcastle away from home, but wasn't good enough. They lost that game 4-3. But this one looks to be a tough one for Arsenal. I'm just going to throw it out right away. On Pinnacle, Nottingham Forest to win this game at plus 300 seems a big number. I'm going to make that play, Jake, because of the fixtures that are building up for Arsenal. Like next week in the Champions League is paramount. But the fact that Nottingham Forest at home has been a decent play all season long, and the attacking options for Arsenal leave much to be desired. So that's where I'm going on this play. I'm going to make a pro Nottingham Forest play.
Yeah, I wouldn't put anybody off that. I think the huge kind of disappointment last week, with having kind of said that there was still a title race on, was the fact that Arsenal had the opportunity to put more pressure on Liverpool playing first. If they win that game against West Ham, Liverpool's game against Man City might have been completely different. Might have looked a little bit more nervous, but because Arsenal lost, it was basically like a free hit for Liverpool, in the sense of if they go there, beat Man City, bonus. If they avoid defeat, fine. If they lose, fine. Which kind of took the sting out of, or the kind of jeopardy out of what could have been a pretty big game in the title race. So, it's disappointing. I think this kind of is pretty much done now. I mean, the prices suggest it is all but over, and some bookmakers over here have already paid out on Liverpool to win the title. More a publicity stunt than anything, but it's
No kidding.
It's a pretty much all done, and mainly with the fact that Arsenal don't have any attacking players. That's the main. I think if you've got Bukayo Saka fit, if you've got Havertz and Martinelli, you could maybe make a case that Arsenal could go on a run and put some pressure on, but they're just not. They just can't do that at the moment. I definitely will be looking at making a pro Forest bet, but I am very hesitant in the fact that Arsenal's defence is still the best in the league. And I just wonder if Forest can or will score against Arsenal. I have the same concerns going the other way as well, whether Arsenal can score against Forest. So I'll be looking at making an unders play. The line was 2.5 when I looked. It's now moved to 2.25. I still would take that bet. Arsenal, one of the lowest scoring teams away from home in the Premier League. They've gone under 2.5 goals in 9 of 13. Which obviously, we're taking under 2.25 is a par bet on under 2, par bet on 2.5. I think that'd go very, very close. And I wouldn't put anybody off back in a long, a bigger price, 0-0 or no goal scorer or under 0.5, however, which way you want to go about it, because I do think this has the potential to be a very, very cagey 0-0.
It's very rare, though, 2.25 in terms of where the total's set in the Premier League. And I think that Nottingham Forest can score. I think they've shown that over the years, over the season. They started off as a slow burn, but Chris Wood, I mean, he's had a career season, and their attacking players are pretty consistent. Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs-White, Alanga, there's some bite to this team. And going to St. James's Park, I know they were playing from a trailing place, but they scored 3 in that game. Their XG numbers in recent weeks have been good. You mentioned it, like the total's so low because they've only conceded 10 goals at home on the season, Nottingham Forest. And the question is if Arsenal can score in this game. Lewis Skelly's suspended. And I should also mention that Forest is 6-1-0 in their last 7 at home. So they haven't lost in their last 7. They've been a decent home side. So I understand the underplay here. That would be the angle that I would take as well. But plus 300 against this Arsenal side, I mean, that just looks, it's too good to turn down. It's one of those numbers. I thought it would be in the plus 220 range, to be honest with you. When I'm kind of going through my numbers, I thought it was more so in that range. If you're going to be, it's actually come down from plus 300, so it's got bet a little bit. I think when I looked on Sunday night, it was in the plus 313 range, so it's plus 300 now. I'm taking it. Make that a full unit play, backing Forest to beat the Arsenal this weekend, or this midweek, I should say. What else are you looking at midweek, Jake? Take us away on the Osgathorpe plays in the Premier League.
We'll start on the Tuesday. I like goals in both Palace Villa and Brentford Everton. I think the goal lines are set way too low for both of them. It's very rare in this day and age that we get a line at 2.5 in the Premier League. And I think when we do, we kind of have to back it because generally, I mean, the goals have been through the roof the last
Unless
season
it's
and a half.
Arsenal Forest.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry, I should have prefaced. Yeah, that one. Back the under. But yeah. Palace Villa. Villa away from home are a bit of a gift when it comes to goals. They've gone over 2.5 in 9 of 12, averaged 3.1 goals per game, 3 expected goals per game. Palace may not seem on the face of it as a high-scoring team, but the last 5 home games they've gone over in 4 of those. And I think you factor in the tight turnaround for Villa, a squad that is absolutely bare at the moment. Tyrone Mings came off injured at the weekend, which means that they're down another centre-half. They've just got Konsa back. Kamara, the standing centre-half, is injured as well. Torres is still out. So they're very limited defensively. They have a weekend FA Cup game and then a midweek Champions League game as well. So there's good, they are going to be very, very tired. There's going to be a lot of rotation. I think that'll lead to Palace being able to score quite a lot. But at the same time, that rotation on the front end for Villa is very, very good. They've got like 6 or 7 forwards now that they can just rotate in and out. Watkins, Rodgers, Asensio, Rashford, Ramsey, probably missing a few others there as well, Marlon, Bailey. So they've got firepower, and I think it could well turn into a bit of a shootout this between two teams that are very, very comfortable in where they are. So overs in that one, -114, and then the other one is overs in the Brentford game against Everton, -117. Looks an absolute, again, a bit of a gift because Brentford are just absolutely mental for goals, especially at home. They've gone over in 9 of 13, average 4.2 goals per game at home. And then you factor in Everton's turnaround, especially in attack, much more dangerous under Moyes. Scored 14 times in David Moyes' 7 league games, average 1.7 expected goals for per game. I think that they can definitely go toe-to-toe with Brentford. And let's just say I would be very, very surprised if this game ended in the same way as it did at Goodison Park, which was 0-0. Yeah. Because we don't have Sean Dyche anymore.
Well, that and Norgard was sent off for Brentford in that game as well, but played a role in that. You mentioned it. Brentford hasn't scored in their last 2 at home against Liverpool, and somehow they didn't score against Spurs. If you watch that game, you're like, how didn't they find a goal? But before that, they hit the over in both the City game at home as well as the Arsenal match at home. But Everton's the reason why you play the over. This is one of my favorite plays of the week as well. No losses in 3, no clean sheet in 4, which is very un-Everton. Under David Moyes, they're 4-2-1. They're 4-2-0 in their last 6. 14 goals scored over that span, but they've only kept a clean sheet once. So that's why the number is low, because they've only scored 9 away goals on the season, but they're a completely different side under David Moyes. Alcaraz has been such a massive addition to this team in the way they play. Beto's on a good run of form as well. So yeah, the over 2.5, it's an automatic play for me, in terms of the midweek slate.
Absolutely.
What else are you looking at? Anything else?
Yeah, the probably my favourite bet of the week is Liverpool-Newcastle taking the over. The line's at 3.25. I'm going to take 3.5. I'm going to push it to get a plus number, plus 119. I think this is going to be an absolute humdinger. I think it's going to be end-to-end style football. The only nagging doubt is that this is the Carabao Cup final, so I wonder if they want to give anything away. But I think both are in a position where it's a bit of a free hit for them, really, because Newcastle aren't expected to go to Anfield and get a result. They're battling for the top 5. Liverpool, I mean, they've got a big Champions League game next week. They've got no weekend game to shuffle around, so they can go all out here. And if you're right, and Nottingham Forest get a result against Arsenal, and Liverpool then go and beat Newcastle convincingly, that is real curtains. So I think this is going to be a bit of an end-to-end game. I also think it's very interesting that Liverpool, having started the season with such control at Anfield, have completely lost it recently. In terms of the unders were clicking regularly in their home matches, but recently it's gone over crazy. So they've actually seen over 3.5 goals in 6 of the last 8 home matches across all competitions. The Liverpool have scored 2.88 goals per game in that time. So they've ramped up their attacking output, but also have looked a bit defensively vulnerable. You've seen the likes of Wolves, Ipswich, Man United and Leicester. They've all gone there and scored. Man United scored multiple times. Newcastle have been goal crazy as well, over 3.5 in 5 of their last 7 across all competitions. And they're averaging nearly 1.7 expected goals for per away game this season. So they'll go to Anfield, they'll create chances. I think they'll score at least once, maybe twice. And let's remember the early game this season between the sides finished 3-3, just the 6 goals in that one. And last season, this fixture finished 4-2, again, just the 6 goals. And if you remember, that game actually finished with Liverpool registering the highest expected goals total ever seen in the Premier League, over 7 expected goals. So if there's not too much change in terms of the Newcastle back line, there's not too much change in terms of the Liverpool front line, so there's every chance Liverpool could shred them to pieces yet again. Either way, I think the goals is both teams are going to contribute. I think high goal scoring is way to go, and just keep an eye out on Pinnacle for any player props that get put up. There aren't any at the moment, but I've seen some for some of the Tuesday matches, so they might be released. I'd definitely be looking at backing both Mo Salah to score and Isak to score. I would imagine Isak will be close to around plus 175 minimum, I would expect. I'd be backing that. He scored in all of his last 3 games against Liverpool. And Mo Salah, obviously. If you're getting anywhere near even money, maybe slight odds on, minus 110, something like that, snap that up. I mean, the guy scored in 21 of 27 Premier League games this season, which is absolutely mental. So yeah. That's the way I'm looking at it. Goals and goal scorers.
I'm thrilled by the form of Mo Salah because at the beginning of the season, one of the markets on Pinnacle was Erling Haaland to win the Golden Boot, and my play was no. And it was at plus money at a good number, and it's not because of what Erling Haaland is, but they entered the season, Man City, with one pronounced striker. If there's any injury or dip in form or changing of priority, it was going to affect them. And Mo Salah has just been incredible this season. Haaland's in a group with like Wood and Isak and others now. So it looks to have been a savvy play. By the way, all the markets that we use on this podcast are courtesy of Pinnacle. Bet smart. Bet Pinnacle. All right, you like the over there. Shall we continue? Do we have even more plays this midweek?
Yeah, I've got 2 more. Well, they're both a little bit bigger in price. The first one is Tottenham to beat Man City at plus 227. Again, it's going to be small stakes for me because I don't think either team are very reliable at the moment.
Yeah, that's why I stayed away from this game entirely. I can't trust either outfit at this point.
Well, I'm happy to have a small bet on Spurs because the head-to-head, they've got a really good record against City. They have their number, especially at home. They've got injury favourabilities, schedule favourabilities in their favour as well. So the Spurs have players back fit. They're still missing centre halves, but the rest of the team is looking much healthier. They've had rest in between matches as well, so they've got no excuse. They'll be very refreshed. City have played weekend, midweek. They played Madrid twice in that period. And yeah, they've managed to win the last 3 league games. So they are picking up a little bit of form in terms of results. And City were just really poor again at the weekend, weren't they? They've lost 3 of the last 5 against top flight teams. They're away from home since October. They're 2-5 in the Premier League, averaging 1.8 expected goals for and over 2 expected goals against per game. So that's across a 9-game period away from home. The 2 wins came against Leicester and Ipswich. Across all competitions since that run, since October, they've won just 3 of 15, lost 10 of those away from home. So they are travelling atrociously. The only other win in that time was against Leyton Orient. So they've beaten Leyton Orient, Leicester and Ipswich in the last 15 away games. And I don't think Tottenham are quite that bad. They maybe were a couple of months ago, but now they've got a few players back. And then you throw in the fact that City just generally struggle to deal with Spurs and their style of play. The fast transitional football that they can operate in. And if we exclude the win last season where Spurs, if they got a result against City, would have handed Arsenal the title, and there was all that, do we want to do that? Shall we let them win almost? So if we move that one out of the way, they actually won the previous 4 home games against City at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They've won them all to 0 as well, which is surprising. A lot of that is down to poor finishing and good goalkeeping, but still 4 wins on the spin. And then the injuries, Rodri, Akanji, Stones, Diaz came off injured at the weekend, possibly Haaland. We haven't seen him since Newcastle, so I think everything stacks in Spurs' favour at plus 227. They don't have a weekend game either. They can just go for this, prep for the Europa game next week, and go again.
I mean, City has a free hit on the weekend against Plymouth. I mean,
Plymouth just knocked Liverpool out.
I understand that, but
let's not get too complacent.
Do it twice.
And they also don't have a squad to rotate too heavily either. City. So.
The line in that FA Cup match, by the way, it's ridiculous. It's not even under consideration for where I stand. I'll stay away from that game entirely because I just want to be able to back a side that I trust, and I just don't trust either one of those teams to make a play there. Any other plays, Jake? I feel like you're going to run the board here. I have
Not
two,
quite, not
I
quite.
have two games that you haven't touched yet.
One, two,
We'll see
three,
if you
four,
get there.
five, six. This is the sixth game that I'll go with. It's the United Ipswich game, and it's more of a stats-based play because if I told you that Manchester United have failed to score in the first half in 16 of the last 17 matches, would you believe me?
Yes, because I've been watching them play, suffering through it.
And then
Non-football. Continue.
so if I told you that we can back United under the first half team total of 0.5 at plus 132, based off the back of that stat,
It sounds good to
automatic
me.
value, right?
Yeah.
They just really slow out the blocks under Amorim. The average across those 17 games, they've averaged just 5.5 shots per game in the first half of matches and just 0.49 expected goals. So they're not creating chances, which is unsurprisingly why they're not scoring goals in the first half. And Ipswich, you know exactly how they're going to approach this game at Old Trafford. Away from home, they're taking a much more defensive approach, and it's why they've got more points on the road than at home because they're setting up to be hard to beat and play on the counter-attack. And that's ultimately going to lend itself to frustrating United trying to play on the counter-attack with Delap and Hutchinson. And obviously there's the kind of subplot of Kieran McKenna was in the running for United job at a certain point. Former Manchester United assistant coach will want to almost make a good impression just in case there is any more managerial changes on the horizon. So yeah, I think Ipswich can go there, frustrate United for the first half at least. Whether they can go get a result, I'm not too sure.
They played to a 1-1 in Amorim's first game in charge of Manchester United. United didn't look any good in that game, and they're a worse off team now based on the players that they've lost.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. The 2-2 against Everton, fortunate. They didn't play football for like well over an hour again. Just can't get excited about them. I might as well jump in here because in the FA Cup on the weekend, that is my one play. I'm betting against Manchester United. They take on Fulham. I'm taking Fulham on the handicap, plus a quarter of a goal at plus 103. I mean, that kind of in your back pocket if it ends up finishing level and going to pens, then it's a half win. Fulham have lost to United narrowly in 4 of their last 5 times that they played. Like the last game, it didn't look like anyone would score if they played for 3 days straight. It was a fluky Lisandro Martinez goal that won it that day. And I just can't back United ever against anyone, especially at home where their football is even worse than it is away from home. So Fulham at plus 103 on the handicap. They were really bitten by the last time that these two sides played, that they ended up losing that game at Craven Cottage. So I'll back Fulham there on the weekend. I'll also back Fulham on the handicap against Wolves midweek, because Wolves are the favorite here, but there's too big of a market correction based upon what happened on the weekend. Fulham lost to an informed Crystal Palace side, who I think have been trending in the right direction for quite some time. Wolves beat a 10-man Bournemouth side. Wolves aren't a very good home team, 3-1-8 at home, just 10 points. It's 4th from the bottom, and they're the 5th lowest home expected point total. Fulham have been good away, the 4th most away total in terms of expected points. They've 21, and they've the 3rd best away expected goals against. So I know that Wolves smashed Fulham 4-1 last time they played, but 2 of those goals came late. It was kind of against. Fulham were pushing the numbers forward, trying to come up with an equalizer. They got bit by 2 late goals, but Fulham, I'm going to just protect it a little bit on the draw no bet. So Fulham 0 on the handicap at minus 115. There's too big of a market correction there. Same thing goes for Brighton and Bournemouth. This game's on Tuesday as well. Brighton smashed Southampton 4-0, a 5.12 XG in that game according to Understat. Back-to-back wins against Chelsea, who are right out of form as well. So Brighton only have 4 home wins on the season. Bournemouth, meanwhile, they lost 1-0 on the weekend. That's only their 2nd loss in 16 games in all competitions since November 30th. Those losses against Liverpool and then a man down against Wolves. They haven't lost away from home Bournemouth since November 9th, a span of 9 games in all comps, and they scored 2+ goals in each and every one of them. 3rd best in terms of away expected points and the 2nd most away goals scored as well. You can get Bournemouth on the handicap here, plus a quarter of a goal, plus 0.25 at plus 108. Again, the market just overcompensated for the fact that Brighton looked great on the weekend, and Bournemouth finally lost a game. Bournemouth are the better side here. I don't think they should be underdogs. So at a quarter of a goal in the handicap at plus 108, it's an automatic play. I still rate Bournemouth. Zabarni's out. Whether it be Cook or someone else comes in at center back, I'm fine with it. Yeah, quarter of a goal, I'll take it every day, especially at a plus number. The only other one, this is like the Premier League podcast here. Chelsea Southampton, the handicap is -2, Chelsea at home. They need to get back on track. Is 2 full goals bettable when you're considering Southampton loses every game by two goals or more? Like, I found an alternative market because the 2 on the handicap's being pushed out to -114 on Pinnacle. Chelsea to win to 0 is at plus 138. They can't keep a clean sheet. They haven't kept a clean sheet in 7, but I feel like this is a game they need to play at home, put it on lockdown against a really, 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 really bad Southampton side. That's maybe the way you get on side in making a pro Chelsea play, because whenever you see Southampton, you bet against them. It's just a matter of how.
Basically, yeah. Just keep hammering the Southampton train. I just don't know if I can trust Chelsea. There's a real feel from me that the players have stopped playing for the manager, and that he's probably 1 or 2 more bad results away from losing his job, given the way in which Chelsea operate. So I think if that is the case, Southampton could go beat Chelsea.
This has got to be the game, right? Like, you circle this game and you get back on track. They're heading back into the Conference League. Like, this is the time that, I mean, there's no justifiable way to back Southampton against anyone right now.
No, I wouldn't be making a pro Southampton play.
The context, there's nothing. The
only kind of thing that you can say about Southampton is that the data says that they're a better away team than they are at home, but they're still a bad team. It's not like they're a mid-table away team. They're still one of the worst in the league, but their process is better away. I believe in this alone just because I don't trust Chelsea at the moment. 3 wins in 12 across all competitions, or 13 now. Is a sorry state of affairs for a team that were in a title race, and now they're on the outside of the top 6 looking in. So yeah, I'm not too sure. And when the manager's doing stuff that just makes you scratch your head, like what the hell's going on, playing Reece James in midfield and Pedro Neto as a striker when you've got Nkunku, it's like something's not right there. Like, let's not overcomplicate things by putting a right back in midfield, and let's play your striker up front, and let's put your left winger on the left wing.
Reece James looks heavy out there. He more looks like former NFLer Edgerrin James than Reece James. Like, it's because he hasn't been fit. Like, he just doesn't look.
He never is fit because he gets injured every 5 minutes, and then he has to do the whole rehab again. And it's I
could have picked LeBron James, but what other Jameses are there? I really like the player. It's really too bad that just injuries have done this to him, because he just looks like. Just nowhere near the player that he once was. Okay, we're running a lot. That's a lot of time on the Premier League in English sides, which I love, which is great. It's what this podcast does best. But let's spend a few moments to run you through European football. Copa del Rey action midweek. Atletico Madrid and Barcelona. I have no play there. I don't know if you do, but Real Madrid to win at -122 at Sociedad. Sociedad isn't a very good team. They won 3-0 in the weekend, but this season has been a little bit of a disaster. Even as a Manchester United supporter, I'm like, Sociedad, Europa League. United can maybe actually get past a team like Sociedad. They haven't been that bad. And there isn't very many teams I'd say that about. So I would back Real Madrid at -122 in the Copa del Rey away from home. My favorite play comes on the weekend from Spain. My favorite play in La Liga is Getafe to come away with the result at Leganés. Leganés is the worst in terms of home expected points. They don't have a win in 3, no clean sheet in 5, 1-3-4 in their last 8, which is 18th in the form table. Getafe's won their last 4 away from home, and they lost 2-1 on the weekend to Betis. It was a good game. Like, they're not a bad side. So I think you can get on side with them on the handicap at -a quarter of goal at +112. Getafe win outright is probably the best play at plus 155. Or if you want Liga not to score because they really struggle to score, plus 126 is available on Pinnacle. And if you want to swing for the fences, Getafe to win to nil at plus 260. I'd recommend each and every one of those plays. That's it for me in Spain. I was tempted by Atletico Madrid and Bilbao, but the fixture list kind of doesn't line up to do that. Valladolid and Las Palmas. Again, Valladolid, one of those teams you bet against them every time, but Las Palmas is really struggling as well. I'm tempted by the away side, but that's all that I'm going to go for there. Any comment about Spain before we go on to Italy?
No, not really. I think, yeah, I agree. I think that the Madrid price against Sociedad looks nice. Sociedad not great, and Madrid. I mean, they're starting to get healthier as well, which is worrying for everybody in Europe, really, when it comes to Champions League and the league. So, yeah, looks a good price.
On the weekend, the marquee fixture in Serie A. By the way, there's Coppa Italia midweek. Nothing for me there, but Napoli plays Inter on the weekend. This can go a long way to deciding who goes to win Serie A. I'm going to back Napoli here on the draw no bet, the zero handicap at plus 120. Napoli don't have a win in 4, no clean sheet in 6, but they're an excellent home side. They're 9-1-2 at home. 8 goals conceded is the fewest in La Liga, and their 9.31 expected goals against in 12 games is by far the best in the table. Inter have been on a weird wobble here. They burnt me a couple times over the last couple weeks. They've been unreliable in league play. 2-1-2 in their last 5 in Serie A. They also play Coppa Italia midweek against Lazio. Then they play at Feyenoord next week in the Champions League. Napoli doesn't play midweek or next week in the midweek as well. So the fixture list lines up really well for them. They actually beat Genoa on the weekend 1-0, but they lost the XG in that game. So I think backing Napoli and just safeguard it with a potential draw, which I think would suit them as well at plus 120. It's worth the risk for me. I think it'll be low scoring, but a pro Napoli play there works for me. I also going to keep on betting against Monza. I'm going to bet Torino to win at plus 120 away. Monza's 1-1-8 in their last 10. They play Roma on Monday as well, so that might be even worse by the time we get to that game. And 7 home points is the worst across Serie A as well. Let's put it this way. Their last home match, they had a .28 expected goals against Lecce in a 0-0. Torino can score goals. Monza is just an awful side. And then on the theme of backing decent enough teams against bad teams, Genoa against Empoli. Empoli stinks. Like, Genoa minus 106 at home seems like a gift. Genoa, again, not a bad side, 4-2-4. They got off to a really difficult start to the season. 3 wins in a row at home, all against bad teams, and Empoli is one of them. Empoli's 0-2-8 in their last 10, worst in the form table. They've given up 27 goals over that span. 4 losses in a row, no wins against 11, no goals scored in 3, no clean sheet in 16. They are horrible. Genoa also hasn't lost to Empoli in 10. So Genoa minus 106, book it. Anything there in Italy, Jake, as I turn back to you?
No, I do. I like the last 2 plays you mentioned, the Torino and Genoa. Yeah, it does seem as though there are, well, in every league really across Europe, there are 1 or 2 teams that are just considerably worse than everyone else in the league. And in Italy, that is Empoli and it is Monza. In Spain, it's Valladolid. In England, it's the three teams currently in the bottom 3. So,
especially Leicester City and Southampton, like those 2, and then in Germany it's Holstein Kiel. Like, those are the 6 teams, and you're not a square if you're getting the team that you're betting on against them at a decent enough number. It's just about finding what that number is. But Genoa at home minus 106, no problem. Like, done and dusted. Finally, in the Bundesliga, 1 play for me. RB Leipzig burnt me last week. 2-2 to a tired Heidenheim side to come back from 2 goals down to draw that game. You could get Mainz at plus a half a goal, so a draw or win's good enough at minus 103. Mainz has been money in the bank. They've been one of my most profitable sides to back over the course of the season. They continue to do it. No losses in 3. Haven't allowed a goal over that span. They're a controlled team. They score enough goals to get the job done, but defensively, very, very stingy. They're fifth best in away points as well. Leipzig, no losses in 4, but they just draw everyone. And they play Wolfsburg in the Pokal midweek, which is a priority based upon the way that their season has gone. Leipzig, 5 draws in their last 6 games. They're just 10th in home expected points. So there's no intimidation factor there. I'll continue to back Mainz, especially if you're getting a little bit more juice by backing them on the handicap here. So that's my board this week. Just the one play in the Bundesliga, nothing in the Pokal midweek. What are you looking at, Jake, if anything at all?
Nothing. I've just kept my focus on midweek Prem primarily. I think plenty of opportunities there. And if we're reeling off my top 3, there's a nice little segue there. We'll go with number 1, over 3.5 goals in Liverpool versus Newcastle, plus number. 2 is going to be over 2.5 in Brentford Everton, and 3 is over 2.5 in Palace versus Villa. I think the goal lines are where it's at this week.
Okay. Number 1, I've a nice little bit of profit here, and I think that playing some of these plus number plays could work out well. Let's go Nottingham Forest to beat Arsenal at plus 300. I also like, where do I want to go with my second one? Let's go with Getafe. Getafe at Leganés to win to 0 at plus 260. We're coming out swinging here this week. And then we'll just go a more straightforward Genoa to beat Empoli at minus 106 at home. So those will be my 3 plays. That's it for us this week, just because the fixtures are coming fast and furious. By the time we turn this around, you won't have enough time to consume, but there's lots there for your podcast enjoyment as well. Follow Pinnacle across social media as they're putting out content from this podcast throughout the course of the week. Remember to bet smart, bet Pinnacle. We'll be back next week to do it all over again. Champions League next week. So we'll be back with a Monday podcast. Looking forward to the next round of fixtures, which should be outstanding. So full recap then. On behalf of Jake Osgathorpe and everyone at Pinnacle, I am Gareth Wheeler. This has been episode 30 of Pinnacle FC.